So at this point, I'd like to delve a little further into what a mini model, a mini LBO, or short form LBO as it's alternatively called, looks like in the context of we've gotten a SIM and there's certain high level information in the SIM. What do we do to figure out whether to move forward towards that indication of interest? The big modeling is done in the context of getting to a letter of intent, as we're going to get to later on in the course. But at this point, what we do is we take the management case that's presented in the SIM, usually, and then simply plug that into a mini model that layers out, well, okay, if we assumed that what management is saying is going to happen, what does the return profile look like? And that work, again, is pretty quick. It's a simple LBO model, certainly not as complicated, nor near as complicated as our full LBO modeling course, where you're building a full integrated 3-statement LBO model with pro formas and things like that. That comes in the later stages when you're working towards a letter of intent. Okay, so here's that SIM, right? And these documents can be anywhere from a short one. This is certainly on the shorter side as a representative SIM for our hypothetical company, Joco. They can get up to 90 pages and have more detail. But in terms of the financial level of data, this is what you should expect to see in a SIM, right? You're going to see an income statement all the way down to net income and EBITDA. You're going to see some balance sheet data. And that's it. I mean, really, it might be a little more detailed. You might have more detailed segment data. We see here revenue and expense buildup. But what we want to do is just plug in these basic details and figure out what the return profile is. So I'm going to switch over to the mini model. And I'm going to walk through this again. This is not necessarily a full-blown modeling course, but I want you to understand how this model works. So typically what you will see somewhere, usually on top, is the output, the summary outputs. What does this business look like in terms of revenue to EBITDA? Again, using management's data. So if you see here, there's an output of revenue all the way to EBITDA and net income, and then you've got some balance sheet data and some cash flow data as well. And then most importantly, here's the basic sources and uses. So in this transaction, we haven't really contemplated anything yet in terms of financing, but we can make some high level assumptions. Let's say half of this deal, let's say we're assuming this, this thing is bought at 500 million. We'll make those assumptions in a second. It's roughly 10 times the company's EBITDA. And let's say we fund roughly half of it with debt, and the rest of it we're going to fund with equity. And most of that is going to go to pay off the business. And of course, there are going to be some transaction and financing fees, right? And so what are the returns to us, the equity owners, based on what we can exit the business at? What we can exit the business at, right? So if we get in at 10 times and we exit at 10 times, well, we're going to generate a 21% IRR for this business based on the management case of where their EBITDA ends, for the management case of how they overall perform, and our initial funding assumptions. So now in order to get here, let's go through some of these assumptions that have been laid out in the model, right? These are all formulas. So where does, and they're all fairly straightforward, but let's go through the guts of the mini model. This is a model that would take you probably about an hour to complete, just putting in the data. So again, not a very complicated model. Here are the assumptions. The hard code is, okay, we're going to get in at 10 times. Where does that come from? Well, it depends on the industry, and again, depends on the growth profile of the business. So this is an assumption that has to get made up front. Sometimes you're going to get some indications from the bankers at this point about what type of transaction valuation you might need to achieve, but sometimes you don't. And you get to this enterprise of $538 million, 540 is what we got to do. Let's assume that we exit at the same multiple that we entered. That's a relatively safe assumption for your sort of original sort of mini model case. What's the exit year for our analysis? Well, let's assume that we get out of 2023. Doesn't really matter. We can flex it to 2024. You don't want to flex it beyond the company's growth profile, because then you'd have to sort of add more years than what the company provided, right? They gave you 5 years of data, which is not atypical. So at this point, we've made our key assumptions. One other thing to note, and we haven't really talked about this yet, we will later on in the course, but the management option pool. So there's a little carve out that says, okay, well, when we own this business, we still have to incentivize existing management and new employees to come in. And we're going to have to do that via options or other stock-based compensation. And so let's say that 10% of the company's value, of the company's equity value at the exit, is actually not going to belong to us, right? So we own 100% of it, but in order to keep management on, if we kept all that equity, well, you're not going to be able to incentivize management. So 10% is carved out for management. And so the management fee refers to, hey, in order to run this business, we are going to extract $5 million every year from the business, and that's going to go straight into the fund's pocket, right? So this is sort of a typical feature of taking money out of the business to fund the management of that business. This is something that is controversial, but is nonetheless used. Okay, so now that we've identified, management fee is going to be basically the greater of the $5 million or 5% of EBITDA. This gives management some sort of monetary extraction before the exit event. And so that's how this is structured. And you'll see that this comes out of the income statement that we're about to get to in a second. So let's just get there in a second. So now that we've laid out some of the key assumptions, now let's talk about what the sellers actually receive. So we have a high level sort of, okay, well, if the enterprise value is 540 million, we have debt of 75 million. So the existing sellers have 75 million in debt on their books, and they also have cash on their books. So what the seller is going to receive is 510 million. That's what goes into the pockets of the seller. Now, as we've already alluded to in the course, and we're going to certainly talk about later on, really from our perspective, this is an irrelevant sort of thing. It's very relevant for the sellers because this determines how much pre-existing debt they have and how much cash they have on their balance sheet will determine how much they actually put in their pockets. But from our perspective, these deals are typically done on what's called a cash-free, debt-free basis, which means that we are simply paying for all of the enterprise value of the business, excluding the debt and the cash. So this is just something that tracks what the equity to the sellers is going to be. But ultimately, this is what we are going to be paying when we calculate our sources and uses. So if you go back here, you'll notice that the uses of funds is that's 538. That's the purchase price is the enterprise value, right? We're not assuming any of the debt. We're not and we're not taking on any of the cash. That's the typical scenario. So okay, ownership. So we have Zach Freeman and other management. If you recall from the sim, you've got Zach, who's the CEO, and although it didn't explicitly say it in the sim, it might say it in the sim or it might not. The cap, the actual sort of cap table or whatever, less commonly you're going to see it. So just for illustrative purposes, if you do have a sense of kind of who the major owner is, you're gonna put that in here. And let's say that we find out that Zach Freeman has 60% and the rest of the management owns 40%. I'm gonna sort of ignore this for now. This is related to a concept called rollover. I'll talk about it at the end. But basically, we're assuming that we're gonna buy out 100% of this company. Rollover means that these guys, or a portion of their equity, rolls into the new business. That adds a little bit of complexity, not too much, but let's hold off on that. So now we got 60 and 40% for other management. And so again, what that means is if Zach owns 60% of the enterprise, of the cash coming in, right? So again, this is when we're trying to figure out, well, how much does everybody get? So how much do the existing sellers get? It's a function of the equity value to them, not how much we pay for the business, because they also have this pre-existing stuff that really has nothing to do with us. So they got 300 million and 200 million for the other management. And so obviously this matches. We're going to have to deal with the rollover in a little bit. Let's put a pin in that for a second.